Hi, I'm Fabrice Harari. Welcome to my AWP What, When, When and SEO course. This course is going to talk about WebDev and the different mode that you can use WebDev and in particular the AWP mode, what it is, when to use it, why you want to use it, and of course the search engine optimization technique that you can use with it. What is the AWP mode? What are we talking about when we are talking about AWP? Well, there are in fact 4 modes to create website inside WebDev. The first mode that we are going to talk about is the classic mode, which means it's not the AWP mode. The classic mode is the mode that is closest to developing in WebDev. Why? Well, because everything is managed for you. Session, context, etc. What does that mean? It means that it's extremely powerful because, well, basically you're going from one page to the next exactly like you're going from one window to the next in WebDev. You keep your position in the files, you keep the content of your variables, you keep basically everything that you are able to keep in WebDev, you keep in WebDev Classic. It is extremely powerful, which makes it absolutely perfect for all the intranet or extranet development. What do I mean by intranet, extranet? Well, if you're developing a website that is going to be used inside a company or an organization, and it doesn't matter whether it is inside a physical office or everywhere in the world, but just by members of the company, then this is intranet, extranet, and it is absolutely perfect to develop in classic mode because it's something that is internal to a company that you don't want to expose to the outside world. So this is a match made in heaven. This, of course, needs a WebDev server. WebDev server, why? Well, because the pages are generated dynamically. When you request a page, the WebDev server gets your request, look at the data that is needed, merge it inside the template of the page that you have created and displays it. And during that time it keeps the context of the files, the context of everything in the database and your global variable and all that. It keeps all that in memory on the server, and when the next page arrives you still have all that. So of course it needs a WebDev server. A WebDev server is something that you buy extra to WebDev and that you install on your own server or on a dedicated server. The alternative to that is to go to a company who does WebDev hosting, and that's different from general hosting. They have to be specialized in WebDev hosting, and they're going to rent for you some space on a WebDev server and some memory on a WebDev server for a few euros per month and per site or per 2 sites. It depends on the offers. So there are some offers starting at 5 euros per month for 2 websites, and I don't know, perhaps 550 megabytes on drive, etc., or something like that. So for small websites it's absolutely perfect, it doesn't cost a lot, and they are managing the whole shebang for you. So that's the classic mode, and I recommend that each time you can, you do classic mode. Now, the second mode that is available in WebDev is PHP. So, what does that mean? It means that after you've developed your website basically the same way than you did for the other one, WebDev is going to generate PHP pages coded in PHP. So that's the HTML plus PHP classic thingy that you get. But it is much more limited than the regular, the classic mode. There's no management of session by itself. There are many functions and controls that are not available in PHP mode. So you cannot just take a classic site and switch it to PHP. You will have lots of things that don't work at that point. So you need to develop in PHP from the start, for PHP from the start. Also, there is no WebDev server need in that case. Clearly, if you generate PHP, you're going to need a PHP server instead. Now, be careful, the PHP code that is generated in the pages is not modifiable by hand. If you modify the PHP code by hand, it's going to be overwritten the next time you generate your website from WebDev. So you make the change on one side or the other. Furthermore, the PHP code that is generated is ugly as sin. It's not a user-friendly PHP code. It's computer generated, not for read, not for modify, so it's ugly and really not usable like that. So why is it that we have a PHP mode? Well, I think personally that it's because some institutional customers are saying we accept only PHP websites. So if you want to sell them WebDev, you need to be able to tell them, okay, you can make PHP websites. That's the only explanation that I have, and I certainly hope that you don't have customers like that, because that's not the easiest way to use WebDev. Now we reach the AWP mode. Now the AWP mode will need a WebDev server, because the same way than the classic mode, the pages are generated on the fly with the data merged in it, and so on and so forth. So you still need a WebDev server or a WebDev hosting company. It is still very powerful. You can do tons of things on a WebDev AWP site, but it's true, it is limited compared to classic. So why is it limited? Well, the first reason is because the sessions are not managed for you, the context are not managed for you. Basically, each AWP page is a standalone website. Each time an AWP page starts, it connects to the database, has to reload its data, and so on and so forth. There is no hyperfile context or MS SQL context or anything like that. So it is clearly less powerful. It's less like WebDev, and it's more like developing a classic website. However, it is still way much more powerful than developing a website in HTML or any tool like that. So be reassured that the AWP mode is still very easy compared to classic website development. It's just a little more complex than the classic one. Now, one thing that you have to consider that is extremely important: AWP is much better for search engine optimization, and we'll go in detail into why later. So this option is the best one when you want to do an internet website, one that is going to be looked at by search engine and all this kind of thing. That is the option to choose. Now, there is also a fourth mode. You can, it's true, generate static websites with WebDev. It is possible. However, it is extremely 1980. I don't think that today you really want to create static websites, except of course if you have a very small customer who just want a presence on the web, and in that case static web pages with 3 or 4 pages and the classic contact us this, that, the other, what we are doing, who we are, contact us, in 3 pages, static, done in very short time. Okay, no problem, you can do that with WebDev very easily. And you still get, of course, browser code. The browser code is even on static page, it's JavaScript, so it's available, and you develop in W language on the WebDev side, and it's generating JavaScript for the browser code. So you can still do some fancy stuff on the browser side, and you can host that, of course, on any web server. Now, one thing that you have to consider that is extremely important, and we'll talk in detail about that later, is that you can mix classic and AWP mode. So that makes sometimes the best solution for you. It depends of lots of parameters, and we'll get to that later. When do you use each mode? Classic mode is when you have an intranet or an extranet need. So it's inside your company, you're not exposing that to the public. What you want is to develop as fast as possible with as much functionality as possible. You want to make an experience that looks as much as possible like a Windows experience, but on the web. So typically that is going to be the classic mode. Also, it may be that you are on the internet for everybody to be seen, and even the search engine, but that you want to hide your content. And that is a very valid reason. There are websites who do not want to have their content readable by robots, because they think that they are going, it's true or it's not true, that's not the point, but they think that their content is going to be stolen by automatic software and reused without their consent. So if you don't want to do that, there are many different tricks that you use with regular websites to do that. Well, here you can very easily do that just by using the classic mode, because it's just not readable by automatic tools, at least really not easily. So when are you going to use PHP? Well, you're going to use that if a customer really wants you to. And personally, I was able to never develop in PHP mode. So if you have a problem in PHP mode, please do not ask me. I do not know, I do not want to know, and I don't even want to make you pay a fortune in order to know. So I really don't want to work with that mode. It is much slower to develop in PHP because of the limitation and all the things that are not available. So it's going to cost more to your customer to develop in that mode. You have to be aware of that. He has to be aware of that, and he has to have a very good reason to want you to develop in that mode. Also, if the idea is that because you develop and you generate PHP pages, you will be able to easily interface with other PHP code like the standard forums and like PHP BB or things like that, think again. You will not be able to modify the PHP code of your website, which means that you will not be able to easily interface with any other PHP code. You will not be able to include it in it. You will not be able to link to it in a meaningful way. I know, I tried for a customer. It's the only time I worked with that option, and believe me, it was not pretty. So PHP really make them pay. AWP is the mode that you want to use when you develop for the big bad internet. It's the mode that you want to use for search engine optimization. There is no doubt about that. If your target is the general population, if your target is the search engine, is Google, is Bing, is Yahoo, in that case you want AWP. Let's look at things in another way. Why do you want to use any specific mode? Well, the classic mode, you want to use it. You want to use it because it's faster to develop, therefore it costs less money and you're more competitive for your customers. It's easier to develop, so that's a very good reason to develop in that. All the problem of context session are handled internally like in WebDev, and all options are available. This is a trickle-down process. Everything that is developed for WebDev appears first in the classic mode, appears second in AWP mode, and sometimes only in a degraded manner, because not all functions are available in AWP mode compared to classic for some technical reason, and then appears in PHP perhaps one day. So if you want all the options, all the last fields, all the last functionalities, it's the classic mode. PHP, why would you want to use PHP? The answer is you don't want to use PHP. Of course, there may be a gun involved pointed in the direction of some body part that you consider valuable. That's about the only reason why you should consider the PHP mode, in my opinion at least. Why do you want to use AWP? It's more complex than classic, it's therefore less easy and slower. So why would you consider AWP? There is one big reason. It's the elephant in the room. It's you want your website to be on the first page of Google. Yes, you do. I know you do. Well, I do too, no problem. Mine is on the first page. We'll see that later. Search Engine Optimization. This is the holy grail of creating a website. Now, you have to realize that it's a separate job entirely. It's not just about coding, it's about coding a very specific way, knowing exactly what to do and what not to do, and doing things outside the realm of just coding. There are many different things involved in search engine optimization. You want to optimize your website so that it appears as high as possible on the search engine. So the purpose is, of course, referencing a WebDev site. This is what we are talking about today. But before you can know how to reference a WebDev site, you first have to understand how to reference any site, because there is a basic process to follow, and this process is really two different things. One is you optimize your site content, and that part is all about your coding and how you create your website. It doesn't matter which tool you use, the same problematic exists for all tools. You need to have your site matching what the search engine needs, and then you need to create the external links to your site, and that clearly, because there are external links, is not part of simply coding. Optimizing content. Why do we need to do that? Well, of course, if from scratch you know by heart all the rules, all the things that you have to do, and you did not forget anything on any aspect of your website, then you won't have any optimizing to do. But considering all the things you have to think about when you develop a website, and we're talking about a dynamic website with data access, with this, that, the other, I really doubt that you will have remembered everything. I know that I'm not able to do that I will always forget something, and that I will always need to go through optimizing the content of my website. even though I'm following from scratch some basic rules in order to be as readable by search engine as possible. But in general, you create a website, somebody create a website, and you need to optimize its content. For that, what do? Well, you use a search engine optimization tool. There are many tools out there available that are going to read your website and tells you, okay, that is not good, that is really not good, and that is really bad. These tools, well, there's a plethora of websites are offering to do that. And there is also some Windows-based software like the one I'm using personally, which is called WebSEO. Now, I don't have any shares at WebSEO, I don't have any kickbacks. It's just that I tried this tool a few years back, found it practical, had good result with it. After all, I was for several years number one when you were looking for WebDev consulting. Now I'm not number one anymore, but there's a good reason for that. I completely changed my website. I changed from a static website to a completely AWP dynamic website, and I haven't done the search engine optimization work yet. Right now, my website is just the way I have it coded. I didn't go through the optimization of the content phase. And that's the reason why currently I'm in position 4 or 5 on the Google page, on the first Google page, of course, not further away, 4 or 5 in page 1, and not in position 1 like I was before. I still need to work on it. So I'm using WebSEO. You can use whichever you want. There are some of them free, some of them ask for money. It's really up to you. The first step that you're going to go through, and that's true, it doesn't matter which tool you're using, or even if you wanted to do that by hand, but I strongly advise not to, is to research the keywords. Keywords are the terms that people are going to use to find your website. I was giving you the example of my website, and I'm interested that people who look for WebDev consulting find my website. That's my main interest, which means that I want to optimize my website for the search engine for these keywords. So you need to select the relevant search terms that will reach your target audience. And clearly you cannot optimize your website for all possible terms. There are just a limit to what you can do, even though there are some new technique out there that may solve that particular problem, but that will be for the end of this course. So you need to select relevant search term that will reach your target audience. That's clear. Now for that, what do? Well, the first thing that you do is you spy on your competition. I'm pretty sure that when you develop a website, you have a look at what the other websites doing the same kind of thing are doing and how they're doing it, just to have ideas to compare to this, to that. And if you don't, I'm pretty sure that your customers are doing it. So you spy in the competition and you look at the source of their web page, and you will see their keywords. And that will give you a good idea of what keywords to use, what not to use, and maybe you will say, oh, they're using that keyword. That's interesting. That means that, okay, of course, the tools that you're using to do your optimization can do that for you. They will just ask you the URLs of your competition, and they will look at the keywords for you. Now, remember one thing. If a site is multilingual, then the keywords should be multilingual too, You don't want to have English keywords on a French page or French keywords on an English page. Otherwise, clearly, you won't get the right people coming to the right page. So, of course, you need to translate your keywords, but that is not enough. You cannot just go to Google translate the keywords and hope that this will be the right keywords for the other language. When you're going through your loop of spy on your competition, select the relevant search term, well, you need to do the same thing in the other language. And the competition in another language may not be the same website, because some websites are not multilingual. Which means that for each language that you are supporting, you need to do a separate search engine optimization phase. That's completely separate. Now, keywords. You cannot put 200 keywords in a page. Won't work. Because the search engine consider the 2 or 3 first keyword as the principal ones, the most important one. The other one, okay, but they are nearly not important. Now, what I'm telling you here today is, of course, completely hypothetical. Why? Because the search engines are not telling us what is important and what is not important in terms of their algorithm to rank the pages. It is a closely guarded secret. So they're giving us some guideline, and I'll give you the address for the guidelines by Google, by example. But it's just some guideline, it's not the whole story. And currently some people are saying that keywords are completely passé, that the search engine are not looking at them at all. Personally, I do not believe that it's true. So, once you have your keywords, you have to decide on what optimization to do in your pages. And that's where the search engine optimization tool is going to come extremely handy, because it is going to ask you what is the URL of your website, and it's going to look at the website in details, look at all the pages, all the text, all the thing, compare that to your keywords, look at all the things that are accessible by a robot, because it's going to work exactly like a robot would, and then it's going to give you a list of things to do, and you will have tons and tons and tons of things to do. And at that point you will decide on which one you do, which one you don't, if you have a good reason not to do any, and you're going to modify your web pages.